Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to be here with all of you today. My topic today is, would Africa become the next manufacturing floor for the world? Africa. What do we know about Africa? Of course, we all know where Africa is, but how many of us know there are actually 54 countries in Africa? And if I ask you to give me a few words to talk about Africa, what would you say? War, disease, corruption, and safari. That's the Africa we know from BBC, CNN, the media. But that is not the complete, real Africa. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 stories, which is from the other side of the Africa and the potential of it. Let me start with my real story. I came to Ethiopia in year 2011 to set up a shoe factory. It took me 3 months from deciding investment to actual production. In the following 6 months, I doubled the export revenue in Ethiopia in the shoe sector. By the end of year 1, I recruited 2,000 local workers. By the end of year 2, I recruited 4,000 local workers. You're probably wondering, why did you pick Ethiopia in year 2011? Ethiopia ranked 125 in World Bank Doing Business report. Why? The answer is, I did not pick Ethiopia. It was Ethiopia who picked us. The story started in March 2011 when the late Prime Minister of Ethiopia, Meles, had a meeting with Professor Justin Lin Yifu, the chief economist of the World Bank. And the Prime Minister asked Justin's advice in terms of poverty reduction and economic transformation. Justin advised him 3 things. Number 1, he said, job creation, it is the key for poverty reduction. Secondly, he said, the fundamental secret for economic transformation in China in the 80s and also Asia for Tiger and Japan in the 60s, because they captured the window of opportunity during industrialization relocation, and they created millions of jobs that enabled those economies for jumpstart in their economic transformation. And right now, China is about to relocate 85 million labor-intensive jobs. That's a golden opportunity for Africa. Now I want to take you for a closer look on some numbers. Back in 1978, the GDP per capita in China is only $154, which is less than 1/3 the sub-Saharan African countries. The economic growth in China has been a miracle in the past 35 years. 680 million people has escaped poverty in China. According to World Bank, the number of the people living under the international poverty line, which is $1.25 a day in the world since 1960, didn't decline if we exclude the 680 million people from China. And in year 2014, the GDP per capita in China is 7,500. And according to forecast, by 2020, China is going to become a high-income country. What does that mean? That means China is moving from a labor-intensive economy to a more capital-intensive economy. All the labor-intensive manufacturing jobs have to be relocated out of China in the coming few years, exactly like what happened in Japan in the 1960s, what happened in Hong Kong and Taiwan in the 80s. But this round of relocation is far more complicated, because when Korea was relocating, we're talking about 2.3 million jobs. And when Japan was relocating in the 60s, we're talking about 9.7 million jobs. But this round, China is a nation with 1.3 billion population, and 10% are currently engaged in manufacturing. That's 130 million. And out of it, 85 are labor-intensive jobs. Where would those jobs to go? Some people say Southeast Asia, but my answer is yes, but only a small proportion of it. Why? Compared with 1.3 billion population in China, Southeast Asia does not have enough population to absorb all the jobs. In Vietnam, there are only 88 million population. 14 in Cambodia, 48 in Myanmar. That's why we're seeing the rate of the salary increase in Vietnam is even higher in China in the past 5 years. That's why the first time in the history there is this opportunity for Africa. And that is also the reason the last thing Professor Justin Lin advised the late Prime Minister as the remedy for African countries. He said, you need to create a quick success examples because that will bring inspiration, leadership, confidence to Ethiopia and to the continent. The Prime Minister took his advice, went to China 6 months later, and invited a group of investors. I was among them. This is how the story started. So it is leadership and vision and willingness to develop who brought manufacturing to Ethiopia. But what happened afterwards? Prior to the success of this shoe factory, Ethiopia has a privately owned industrial zone. They struggled 5 years to attract international manufacturers, become a residence. After we created the shoe factory, I've been asked by the government to support them on the investment promotion for the first government-owned industrial zone. With less than 3 months, without any international advertisement, all 22 factory units, we all lease them to international manufacturers from India, Turkey, Bangladesh, China, all the world. How did we do it? Success brings success. Action is always louder than word. We brought invested them in, showed them the factory, they signed the lease immediately. And it is because of the success of the 22 factory units in Ethiopia. It is the first time in the history of the World Bank they committed to support industrial zones in Africa. And in year 2013, World Bank gave $250 million to Ethiopia to develop the second phase of the industrial zone. And this success had such huge snowballing effect in the whole Africa continent in the past 2 years. The president of Senegal wanted to learn from it, and last year he built the first industrial zone. Phase 1 will be complete early this year. I'm confident 1,000 jobs will be created in West Africa, in Senegal. And Rwanda is a small landlocked country in the middle of Africa. Nobody believed manufacturing will work, leave alone export. But then last year, this is the first garment factory in Rwanda doing export. They're taking cottons from Burundi, textiles from Uganda, making garments to export to the US market. Through industrialization, they're making Rwanda a small landlocked country to a land-linked country. And this is not all. The country like Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Djibouti, now industrialization is on top of the government's development agenda. So I want to share with you the first thing today. There is an industrialization movement in Africa continent already. It is started. And the second thing I want to share with you is how about doing business in Africa on the ground in reality? Is it easy? Is it difficult? When I first came to Ethiopia, I met the Prime Minister and the Minister of Ethiopia. They told me, Helen, you are doing 100% export. All your raw material will be tax-free. But in reality, it is not the minister or the Prime Minister sitting at the port clearing my goods. It's a 25-year-old junior staff doing that. And you ask that person to make a decision he never made before. It's not easy. I have the brush to brush the shoes. They say this is the brush to brush human teeth. It needs to be taxed. I have a machine to make a hole in the lady's shoes. Because the shape of it looks like a gun, they said it's an illegal weapon. I cannot even get it cleared into the country. What I have to do? I have to personally meet the Director General of the tax, get his organization chart, understood he has 6 deputy director generals, and I went to meet each of them. And when I meet them, I get the names and the telephone numbers of the next 2 layer managers below each of them. And then I invited all of them to a meeting. I prepared a presentation telling them who am I, why I came to the country, what I've done, what am I going to do. most importantly, the problems I have encountered, and afterwards inviting all of them to the production line, seeing from the beginning to the end. A lot of people ask me, why did you take such kind of effort? Because I want to tell you, you are seeing a different perspective in Africa when you are inside. During my first visit in Ethiopia, I went to a field trip with the ministers to some rural area. And we saw some children that are suffering from hunger. So on behalf of the company, I wrote a check of 100,000 US dollars. I gave it to the minister. I said, please take the money to buy some food for those children. You know what happened? The minister looked at the check and he returned it back to me. He said, Helen, I don't want fish from you. I want you to teach us how to catch the fish. Please use this money to buy machinery, to come to my country, to teach our people how to do manufacturing. And another thing also close to my heart. When I'm outside Africa, I always hear people are saying, Africa is not efficient, people are lazy. But I work closely with the Minister of the Industrial. When I have a problem, I will call him 10 o'clock in the evening. He has a very busy schedule the next day. He would come to the office 7 o'clock to meet me. Yes, there are problems in Africa. But if the minister willing to come to the office earlier than the cleaner as an investor, I think that means hopes and that means willingness to change. The last thing I want to share you today happened in this hotel, the Sheraton Hotel in Ethiopia. I stayed there during my first visit in Ethiopia. After 3 days, I was walking along these beautiful gardens, digesting everything I've seen, because it's completely compared from the outside. And then I suddenly hear some music. So it led me to the hotel bar at the back. And then once I'm in this bar, I looked around. I see a lot of Westerners, Americans, singing and dancing inside the bar, but I couldn't see locals, which remind me a personal story 30 years back in Beijing. I was 7 years old. It's the first time my father took me to the capital of the country. And because it's my birthday, my father wanted to give me a treat. He took me to Beijing Hotel. And at the check-in desk, my father asked, how much is it per night? The reception said, 100 US dollars. My father immediately said, it's too expensive, we cannot afford it. The moment he's taking me to leave the hotel of the lobby, as a little young girl, I turned my head back. I look at the lobby. There's a lot of Americans, Westerners in the lobby. At that moment, I thought, that is a world does not belong to me. But because China's development, my life changed dramatically. At the age of 17, I got a scholarship. I went to England for study, and I became a senior executive in the global top financial institutions before I came to Africa. So that moment in Sheraton, in Ethiopia, what went through my head is, outside the big gate of Sheraton, there must be a lot of young girls, exactly like me, 30 years back. In their mind, inside Sheraton, it's a completely different world for them. It does not belong to them. But what they don't know is, if their country can find the right path of development, like China, like the Asian Four Tigers, their life will change dramatically. As a summary, I'm a strong believer in Africa. I believe in strong leadership, sustainable commitment, and successful examples. I believe Africa is going to become the next manufacturing floor for the world. And poverty will not be a destiny, and millions of people in Africa will escape poverty. Thank you all.